Let's get started. Rosemary, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you, Rob. Today we come together in this virtual space, acutely aware of the uncertainties of the election week ahead. I know I bring a load of anxiety with me, and that surely affects my creativity and generosity. All the more important that we celebrate our open table where we connect every week and take action every day to build a community where everyone has access to safe and secure housing. We gratefully honor and acknowledge that we rest on the traditional lands of the Puyallup people. They have lived on this land since the beginning of time. They still are here today. They live, work, raise their children, take care of their community, practice their traditional ways, and speak the Tulshutsi language, just as their ancestors did. And during the month of November, by presidential proclamation, the United States officially honors the heritage of Native peoples. You can see that background with Rob's screen today, with celebrations, memorials, screen abilities, and education events. This month extends the recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day we celebrated last month and reminds us that true allyship with the tribes whose heritage we honor requires action in recognition of their history and rights. Today, I share a recent poem by Lummi tribal member and Washington Poet Laureate Lena Priest, who welcomes us to Indian country. Welcome to Indian country. Where is Indian country? It's everywhere we stand. It's anywhere we dance. It's where the earth loves the feel of our feet. Welcome to Indian country. What does that mean? It means this is where we lift our voice in song and make a joyful drum beat so our hearts can sing along. Welcome to Indian country. This beloved country here where we honor our ancestors by growing stronger every year, by making laughter the answer that wipes away our tears. Welcome to Indian country. What does the future hold? In uncertain times like these, we reach for words that hope and things we can be sure of. Sunrises, beauty, and love. Welcome to Indian country. It's everywhere we dance and where the feast is truly grand. Welcome to Indian country. Now, give us back our land. That ending, of course, takes the poem in a direction most more recent settlers do not expect and are not likely willing to go. It offers an ironic counter to more recent efforts by angry, mostly white residents to, quote, take back our country. Whatever the specific claims, it's clear that land, rights, justice, and belonging have a truly essential relationship. Here in this space, we direct our energies to those who attempt to rest on lands to which they have no clear right to rest, using whatever materials they can find to protect themselves from extreme weather and dangers of the humankind. You may remember that in 2020, at the start of the COVID pandemic, our coalition stirred the pot of action by proclaiming the audacious goal of ending street homelessness by November 1st, 2021. With leadership from Maureen Howard, Garrett Nyland, and others, we lobbied Pierce County to develop a long-range plan to end homelessness and to take on the challenge to end street homelessness within a year's time. A new comprehensive plan to end homelessness came to be and guides the work of the county today. The county shelter group, who gathered to address the November 1st deadline, sought valiantly to increase access to shelter. But the county did not meet the deadline for 2021. And this week, a year later, street homelessness remains a humanitarian crisis. But we continue to insist that, quote, we can end street homelessness now, capital letters, all capital letters. The new winter arrives. We do the smaller but essential tasks of finding coats and hand warmers and dry clothing and trying to mitigate the traumatic effects of continuing sweeps. We still count on one another to imagine systems that can create new housing and people processes that respect and support individuals seeking permanent housing and new directions. In her poem, Lena Priest asks, in her view from Indian country today, what does the future hold? In words that can help center us on our work today, she answers simply, in uncertain times like these, we reach for words like hope and things we can be sure of, sunrises, beauty, and love. Welcome to our work today. So thank you for coming. We have 57 folks in the room, and some of you may be new or have been coming back, as I heard someone say earlier. Maybe I haven't been around for a while. So this is a time we just take a minute or two to have new folks or returning folks introduce yourself very briefly. This is your name, And if you're associated with a group or an organization or a project, to let us know that, and then we'll do that in just a minute after I say a couple other things about our rules here. We have a process. We ask people to raise your hand with the raise hand function when you want to speak, and that will keep you in kind of an order that Rob can recognize. Also, to keep yourself muted when you're not speaking, and to stop your video if you're doing things that might become distracting. We use the chat as an active interaction space, and it's saved so you can get back to it later for information about people, contacts, and events. So please use that freely. And in terms of our community norms, we are also asking that we pay attention to the fact that now we have 60 people in the room. So if you do speak, to be as concise as you can. If you take time to speak, then before you try to speak again, give an effort to try to put some things in the chat as a way to continue your clarification or new questions. Rob will try to moderate that, but sometimes we go long because we have so much to say. So with that, I'd like to ask new folks to speak. And it sounds like, Alan, you have your hand up for some, I know you've been here, but go ahead.
Yes, Alan Brown from Catholic Community Services. I would like to introduce our new director of our supportive services for veteran families program, Mr. Tim McGann, who joined us this week. Tim is successor to Patty Spalding, who is continuing to advocate for veterans in a different venue. So please welcome Tim as our new director serving veterans.
Thank you, Alan. And Tim, you want to say a word or two?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, just wanted to welcome you. And I didn't know if you wanted to introduce yourself, but mostly Alan said what you're up to, but maybe if that's enough, that's fine. You can.
That's fine. Alan got it covered. And I just come from a background of workforce development for over 20 years, working with veterans and workforce and workforce boards.
Wonderful. Great to have you as a resource.
Thank you very much.
Other folks who may be new today or coming back after being away a while?
Sure, I'll introduce myself. My name is Bobby Concio. I'm the new program director at the Arlington Drive Apartments here in Tacoma. I'm working with young adults experiencing homelessness. Previously, the last 2 years, I've been up in King County, so it's good to be back in Tacoma.
Well, welcome back to Tacoma, and we look forward to having you come whenever you can.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark Henderson, and I'm a student at UW-T. I found out about this organization actually a few days ago, so I decided to come to the meeting and see what it's all about. Thank you.
Well, welcome, Mark. Hope you can come back anytime you're available. Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Aviva Soto. I work for Salvation Army Jarvie Family Memorial Lodge. I'm a program aide. I've been involved in mutual aid, harm reduction, and nonprofits off and on for about 20 years now, up and down the West Coast.
Well, thank you for coming and welcome very much, Michelle. Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie Youngblood. I'm the clinical supervisor at Recovery International ENT. And I used to be a member of the Homeless Coalition years and years ago, and I'm back.
Welcome back. Thank you very much. Sharon?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Freeman, and I am with Bethlehem Baptist Church Overnight Emergency Shelter.
Welcome, Sharon. That's a really important program. We really respect your work a lot, so welcome.
Thank you.
Well, this is great. Thank you all for sharing your information. And if anyone didn't get to do that and would like to let us know a little about yourself, please use the chat and put any contact information and the sorts of maybe resources or connections you're looking to make. So Rob, back to you.
Thank you, Rosemary, and thank you for getting us off to a good start this morning. Without further ado, let's go ahead and move into our first agenda item that we do every week, and that is around sharing what we're seeing happening on the streets across Tacoma and Pierce County over the last week. The point of this section of the meeting is to let folks know what they're seeing that's a change, to offer any thoughts or insight about current sweeps that are underway. That work is unfortunately happening within the city of Tacoma right now. And also to let folks know about any needs that they observe, that they're aware of on the streets, so that we can try to address those. So I open the floor. If folks want to raise their hands, I'll call on you and we can share what we're seeing as the winter weather arrives. We'll start with Jeffrey.
Good morning, everyone. The sweeps on G Street are, from what I've seen, are sending some people south. Tacoma Avenue South, on the big green grassy hill. I've seen a few new tents, a few other tents along the east side of Tacoma, kind of tucked down by the fences. I'll be going out to 34th and Pacific to see if there's any new campers there today. And I have a feeling that camp is going to fill up a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And Teresa.
Well, first I want to make sure people are watching the chat. Richard posted all of the sweeps that he's witnessed, and that's a pretty powerful reminder of how intense the sweeps have become of late and how few places there are left for people to go. Because I live on G Street, I'm witnessing G Street emptying out, and I have to say there's more than one feeling about this in our neighborhood. But for me, it's a little bit like watching if I was in a country where people just disappeared. It's that sense. I go out and I don't know who's going to be gone today. It has emptied out a lot, and it's a little bit like a ghost town. So I know where some people have gone, and I know that the HEAL team has connected with some people and gotten them into housing, but I know most of the people who are leaving, they're going to other encampments, which you're seeing sprouting out elsewhere. So just a reminder that sweeping is not useful or good.
Thank you, Teresa. Others with observations or needs? Jay.
This is going to be a observation from my time being on the street. With the rain hitting, it'd be really cool if people started looking at bringing tent repair kits, things to start sealing tents, tent sealant, tarps, waterproofing of any kind for shoes, clothing, coats. Things like that are going to be critical this year because we're just going to be onslaughted with water constantly. So that is something to really think about, because it's something we don't think about. We think about the necessities to save life, but we don't think about water prevention a lot of times when it comes to tenting and people. So please think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, and Richard notes clamps can be useful in this wind to help hold structures together that folks are surviving in. Anyone else with updates of what they've been seeing on the streets? Okay, so Julie and then Michelle.
Hi, I run an inpatient mental health unit, and so we end up with a lot of folks who are having mental health crisis because they are unhoused.
and we can usually get them somewhere to go. But one of my staff was out the other day down by the rescue mission, and there's an encampment out on, I guess it's South Tacoma Way. And a lot of the people that we have unfortunately had to discharge to the shelter are now camped along the road. So we try not to do that, but sometimes it's our only option.
Yeah, thank you for that observation, Julie. Michelle?
Yeah, so I'm having trouble with my phone right now, but the meth is getting stupid strong on the street right now. I walk all over Tacoma. I live right near 18th and G. I walk through all the cuts. I know people in the camps. I'm seeing people overdose off of smoking meth, it's fucking nuts. I don't I don't even know how to address it. Well, I do know how to address it. I mean, you engage with people if they are open to it, but I've never seen it like this before.
Yeah, thank you for that observation as well, Michelle. So I appreciate everyone sharing. What we want to do next is to move into our the new section that we've added to every week's meeting, which is a need and share section. And Christine Lindquist, would you like to kind of set this up so that folks can share what they either need or what they're able to share?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Rob. So I'm just sitting in for Jan today. And this is a short section, and you're welcome to speak up or add to the chat, and I will capture what you submit. But what we're trying to do is determine what resources are already available and what folks need when they're out on the streets trying to help folks. So we're thinking in terms here of like supplies, like some of the things that Jay mentioned earlier. So if you are with a service organization or you're doing this independently, what kinds of things might be helpful for you? And if you have things that you can share, what do you have? So what we're looking for is contact information, what the items are, obviously, contact information, and any organization you might be associated with, if that's applicable. And if you want to put it in the chat, that's great. I'll capture everything in the chat. I'll also, if you want to just mention something, I can capture it here. And then I will send the list out to the whole distribution, everyone on the list. So.
Thank you, Christine. And I see Jay has her hand up.
Sorry, guys. So in Seattle, they have started putting out test strips for fentanyl so that people can test their drugs, because what they're seeing in Seattle is an uptick in people having overdoses from meth and other drugs because they are laced with fentanyl and they don't know it. And so that might be something that we want to look at here. If we have somebody from the needle exchange, that's something for them to think about, or let us know if they have testing strips available. It would just be super helpful to prevent those overdoses that are happening, because that's what we're getting. It's feedback from Seattle's extensive overkick on adding to their drugs.
Great, thank you, Jay. And Mark?
I know that the Tacoma Tool Library, we do, well, I volunteer there. We do fix-it nights where we open it up to the public. If anyone needs anything mended, including clothes, tents, or just about any random equipment other than like a gas-operated vehicle, you can bring it there on Thursday nights between, I believe it's 4 and 5:30. It's in the main branch Tacoma Library. They can just get things fixed for free.
Thank you, Kent. That'd be a great thing if you could put that in the chat. That would be helpful to capture. And Caleb.
I just put it in the chat, but for the strips for fentanyl testing, I did pick some up last week from the needle exchange at 37th and Pacific location right across the street from the health department. You can pick some up there too as well.
Thank you, Caleb. And Dion.
Hi. Sorry, I was keeping my stuff off because it's busy in here. So St. Vincent de Paul will have our community resource center hopefully open within the next couple of weeks. We plan to, if we have the resources, stock up cold packs, which are going to be hot hands, gloves, hats, warmth items. And so we're going to package them as 24-hour packs for people to come in the hope that if anybody needs those things, they can come access the community resource center when it's open. They can pick up those items during any cold weather event. And since, we're funded by grants, not necessarily the county in particular, we get to decide what a cold weather event is. So rain, snow, anything we deem as inclement weather.
Thank you, Dion. And Patricia?
I'm just going to speak. It's not my area of expertise, but with the testing strips and my training, my understanding is, if you have a portion of whatever drug you're checking, it's like a chocolate chip cookie. So some of the test strips need to be tested at different points to show the levels. I could be wrong, but that was what I was told. And I do think that training would be important because the drugs out here are just unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. And then we'll wrap up comments in this section with Michelle.
Hey, we are running out of blankets here at the Jarvie Memorial Family Shelter. If anybody knows where to buy blankets in bulk that come out to less than $10 a blanket, blankets that will actually cover from shoulders to feet, because a lot of the cheap blankets are from waist to feet. If you could email me, I'll put my email in the chat. That would be great. We could really use them.
Thank you, Michelle. All right. So let's move on to our next item on the agenda. As a reminder, please do use the chat if you have items to share or other needs. You put those in the chat. That would be great, because Christine will put together a great spreadsheet to share around afterward. But our next item on the agenda is our community spotlight, and what we wanted to invite Lori Davenport from Tacomaprobono to give us an update on their legal aid programs. So Lori, the floor is yours.
Great. All I have to do is unmute myself. All right. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the chance to be here and talk about our program, because it continues to grow and change, and it's kind of taking shape now where it's a little bit easier to describe everything we do and let everybody know how to access us and all that stuff, because it's confusing. It's confusing to us. It's confusing to me. But we basically now have, I put a link to a flyer that we have, which kind of describes what we currently do and how we're formed, what kind of services we provide. So please check that out. But we've got basically 4 big parts to our program now. And 2 of those parts are under what we call the Housing Justice Project. Now that gets confusing because, okay, Northwest Justice Project, Housing Justice Project, blah, blah project. Everybody's got a project. Our Housing Justice Project is really specific. It does 2 things, and it employs a lot of people. I believe we have at least 16 attorneys involved in this, just in this one project. So it's quite huge. Basically what we're doing is helping to enforce the new rights that the Washington legislature gave tenants in Washington. And that's a big job because it's education, it's actual representation of people, it's just, doing all the things that we've not been able to do in the past. So we're all feeling incredibly grateful to be able to do this work. First and probably the biggest and most significant part of this is our right to counsel. Right to counsel is, it's the Housing Justice Project, but specifically we refer to it internally as RTC. RTC is huge. It means that if you are low income and facing an eviction hearing, which we call a show cause hearing, so don't get confused. It's not, they never call it an eviction hearing. When you get paperwork, it'll be called a show cause. If you get that, either contact us right away, or if it's time is too much of a constraint, show up to your hearing. You will be represented by one of our attorneys. We are doing an incredibly effective job of that. Our courts are doing a great job of appointing people and making sure that, like, if you show up to your hearing, you get an attorney appointed, you'll have time to work with that attorney. What this does, obviously, it doesn't mean that everybody who goes to court and gets represented at their hearing is going to not be evicted. I mean, people are evicted for just cause reasons now. People are evicted for all kinds of reasons. We can't win every case, but what we can do is negotiate with the other side, because that's what you do when you're represented by an attorney. You get the chance to actually talk to the other side rather than just say, oh, well, I guess I'm just being evicted. And then all of a sudden you have a bunch of fines and court costs that you have to pay, a bunch of stuff your landlord says you owe, and you don't have anything to say about it. Now you do. So it doesn't just mean that you either get not evicted, or if you get evicted and you're out on the street. We represent you, we represent your interests, we try to keep you housed, we try to make sure you can move on to the next housing with not the baggage that you would get if you were just getting evicted without representation. So that is a big deal. The other thing we now have, and I have shared, and I think probably most of you have seen it, our housing resource guide, our HJP resources that we now have, those are put together by our housing navigator, Lindsay Russell, who we were lucky to poach from another organization, and she is fantastic. So what she can do is help people who are, okay, they're being evicted, we've done the best we could, we're going to try to help you navigate what happens next. Lindsay can do that. She does a great job. So RTC, right to counsel, is not only there for you in the courtroom, but it's pretty wraparound. You know, we're trying to do a better and better job of making sure people get through that experience if they have to face an eviction hearing. So a lot of successes, a lot of building, but the most important thing to know about it really for everybody is you don't have, if you get a summons and complaint, which is, it doesn't look like a 14-day notice. It doesn't look like any other kind of notice your landlord might give you. It looks like an actual legal pleading. It's going to have numbers down the side of the page. It is different. And it will probably say summons and complaint for unlawful detainer. What's an unlawful detainer? Who knows? It means eviction. It means the landlord says you're staying there and they don't want you there anymore. So summons and complaint for unlawful detainer, you are qualified to talk to RTC and you need to contact us right away. So that's the right to counsel part. The other huge part of what we do in the Housing Justice Project is eviction prevention. And to do that, we've created what we call the HELP team. It stands for Homeless and Eviction Legal Prevention. It's a little bit awkward, but HELP team sounds good. So the HELP team does basically everything else that isn't defense of the courtroom. Say you get another kind of notice, say your landlord gives you a 10-day notice or a 3-day notice or a 60-day notice or whatever you might get from your landlord, or a threat or whatever. The HELP team can help with that. They can also help with stuff like move-in costs, move-out costs, like your landlord kept way more of your deposit than they really were supposed to, or there's a dispute about that or whatever. Your landlord's not making repairs, your place isn't habitable, you think discrimination is going on, you think you're going to be retaliated against if you complain, all that kind of stuff, that landlord-tenant stuff that tends to lead to eviction, which, you know, as soon as they put right to counsel in place, they realized, oh crap, you know, we're doing this, you know, from the back end forward. We need to start getting to people before the eviction notice comes, solve those problems, take care of those disputes. make sure people can stay where they are. So that's what that's all about. Eviction prevention. Unfortunately, I'm going to mention later how to get help from us. We have been doing walk-ins. The help team has been doing walk-ins. It's been really effective. We can't do walk-ins anymore from today through the end of the year just because of staffing issues. So anybody who needs that kind of help team help needs an appointment. Doesn't mean you can't contact us. It just means that you can't just walk up to the door and we'll say, yeah, okay, come on in. Can't do that right now. And we are in the process of doing a lot of stuff, but one of the things that's going to happen is that all of the Housing Justice Project will be moving into one building. So that's going to make it a lot easier as well. So Housing Justice Project, that's two big chunks of what we do. A new part of our program, which we're really excited about and this is beginning to build, is our another project, Family Safety Project. And that is due to some new funding we've received from the state and the county. We're very excited about it. Basically working with providers of domestic violence services and hopefully expanding into sexual assault, all kinds of other crimes really against people that require legal help beyond just protection orders and that kind of thing. We can do protection orders, but we can also do the family law stuff that's required. And because we've got so much housing capacity, we can interweave those things because one of the main contributors to homelessness is domestic violence, people who have family breakups for one reason or another. So family law is like really an essential component of what we all need to invest in order to continue to prevent homelessness. So remember that. Tell people that if you need to tell somebody where funding needs to go. It's a fledgling program, but we're very excited about this. So Family Safety Project is part of what we do. Everything else we do, which is actually huge, goes through our volunteer legal clinics. And that's a whole other part of the program, staffed by volunteer attorneys, mostly with the support of our staff, our paralegals, our intake people, all the great students and volunteers who work for us. We do all the other family law stuff. Most people who go through family law cases end up needing to represent themselves because the need is so high. So we work with volunteers, we work with the court facilitators, we work with DV programs, anybody who can help support this. But we can help with divorce, we can help with parenting plans, custody, child support, guardianship. We have a bankruptcy clinic. We help with consumer issues, estates, probate, and just general problems. You would be amazed how many civil legal problems there are. Maybe you wouldn't, but that's what goes into the volunteer legal clinics. So who's eligible for all this free help? Because everything we do is free. Anybody who has a legal issue in Pierce County. Doesn't matter where you live. You live in Japan, but if your legal issue is in Pierce County, we can help you, especially now that we're so good at doing things by telephone since the pandemic. It's improved a lot of our service delivery. Have to be at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. And as I think probably everybody knows, that's a matrix depending on your family size. It's pretty inclusive. When I first started doing this, it used to be 125%. That wasn't very useful. 200% brings in a lot more people who can get help. Or receiving public benefits also qualifies you. So when we get an application, however we get it, we screen for financial eligibility, we screen for conflicts because we are now one of the larger law firms in Pierce County. And we have to check to see if, have we represented the other side in a similar kind of case? So if people get rejected, sometimes that's the reason. It's just because we help the other side, we can't ethically help you. So we'll refer you to other resources. And program capacity. Right now, I'm kind of scared to actually go into our database and look at how many cases are sitting there waiting for help. I don't want to see it. We're doing a good job of working through them. We would like to be able to help everybody the next day. Realistically, that's not happening. So that's part of the reason for shutting down in-person intake for the rest of the year. But that is really the big one. how do you get hold of us? How do you get help? Because we really, really, really don't want anybody to fall through the cracks, and we don't want anybody to feel like, well, I tried to get them and I couldn't reach them, so I couldn't get any help. Again, our biggest concern is people self-evicting because they get intimidated by a notice, they get intimidated by receiving that summons and complaint. Don't be. Get hold of us. You know, we do have that capacity. So to get hold of the Housing Justice Project, the Family Safety Project, our volunteer legal clinics, the best way to go about it and the quickest and the easiest is our online intake form. We have those set up so that we go through them. If it looks like you have an emergency, if you've got, okay, this is an RTC case, a right to counsel case, we can see those, we will grab those and make sure that we get hold of you. If it's something that maybe the couple of weeks it might take for us to actually schedule you, that might be okay. You might have to wait. So trying to set expectations, but that is still the best way to get hold of us because we gather your information. Doesn't require connecting by phone for an online interview just to get your basic info. So that's that's the place to start. You can also get us by phone, and it's really important to note that we don't have voicemail. So if you try to call us, you can. We do have extensions. We do have individual phone numbers for our staff and attorneys. We use Zoom phone. So if you have already contacted us, you probably have a contact either by email or phone, but you can't just dial our number and leave a message. That is a barrier for some people. They say, well, I called, I couldn't get hold of them. You can get us by phone between 10 and noon, Monday through Thursday. You can call and somebody will answer. They will do an intake. We will get you into the system. So that's important to know. But again, no voicemail. You can come to us in person, but you need an appointment. So we are open. We need to have an appointment before we see you. The plus part, which didn't exist a little over a year ago, is that we now are doing an awful lot of outreach pop-ups. We're going to be at the Tacoma Public Library's Moore branch tomorrow from 2:30 to 6. They're having a job fair for formerly incarcerated people. We'll be there the whole time. If you want to talk to us, if you want us to do an intake, if you need to bring us documents, we're there. We will do whatever comes up at any pop-up. So just look at our website. We have an events calendar there. If you look at our Housing Justice Project page, we also have a list there of when and where we'll be out. We're victims. Come and talk to us. We're there. And we have been really busy. So we have that opportunity. And we have a lot more resources on our website and also current information about how to reach us. So I think that's all the basics. Anybody have any questions? I don't want to take too much time. I probably took too much time.
No, thank you very much, Lori. If folks have questions, let's deal with those in the chat. But I do want to thank you so much, and please do put the website and your contact information in the chat so folks can reach out to you.
Great.
Thank you. So let's transition to talk a little bit about our changing weather and how our community is prepared to respond to the cold weather. So the forecasts for the next week show the first overnight temperatures that we will have this season going below freezing. And so with that in mind, I've invited Delmar Algie from Pierce County and Caleb Carbone from the city of Tacoma to kind of give us an overview of how each government is prepared, or what they're prepared to do to help serve folks and keep people safe and alive through the cold weather that's predicted to start next week. So without any further ado, Delmar, would you like to take the stage first?
Sure. Thank you, Rob. First off, good morning to everyone. It's so good to see everyone together. Always love coming to the coalition because I get to see so many amazing faces that I've gotten to know over the many, many, many years. So good to see everyone. Wow, here we are. So what was it, about 30 days ago when we were all making comments about how, we were still seeing summer-like weather and everything was, just kind of delayed. And we were just like, wow, no rain yet or anything like that. And then, of course, now here we are at yet another extreme. It's just past Halloween and not even Thanksgiving yet. And the forecast is calling for some extreme weather. So, yep, seems to happen like that every now and then in the Pacific Northwest. So I want to just share my screen. Is that okay, Rob? Am I cool? Nope.
You should be able to now.
All right, awesome. Okay, so can everyone see my screen here? Yep. All right, so here at Pierce County, we've been working on putting together a hot and cold or inclement weather response plan for some time now. We've met with several stakeholders in the community to be able to have input. We've met with our Pierce County Department of Emergency Management. We have met with some folks from the coalition. We've met with several jurisdictions in order to be able to put this particular plan together. And in addition to that, we've made some subtle changes as well from the county perspective in that with our HHP contracts that have gone out, and a lot of agencies are on this particular call, so they'll know exactly what I'm referring to. We have changed some language in there to really support inclement weather in these particular times. So I want to just kind of get started here. So the purpose of this particular document that we've all spent time putting together is really to state the obvious, which is to assist our brothers and sisters who are living on the streets unsheltered, and to help them, to help to maximize safety as much as possible for each and every soul that's out there struggling. And that's what we keep in mind, the context of everything as we develop whatever it is that we're developing on the county level, but in particular, when lives are on the line and the weather is either really, really hot or really, really cold, we think on the micro level and we think of those individuals that are out in the streets, and that is really driving us to put these things together, these particular policies. So the background, I want to just share a little bit of information with folks, and this is all straight from our point in time count, which is actually coming up once again in January. So there have been approximately 1,230 people in permanent emergency beds. I'm sure that everyone can kind of read the slide here. And at any given point in time, we've got about 4,300 people that are really experiencing homelessness. And that's, from that 1 day of snapshot of the point in time count. And so obviously doing some math here, 4,300, and you've got 1,200 that are in those shelters. So that means that you got about 3,070 people that are living unsheltered. And again, that's on any given day. So if you can take a look out your windows and you can see the rain coming down, you see the wind starting to pick up and things of that nature, thinking that on any given day, we've got over 3,000 people that are trying to navigate what their lives are like and stay alive in this particular weather. So the scope of this document that we've created is essentially for our staff to come together and coordinate additional temporary shelter beds and other supplies as needed for these types of events. Again, whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold. Right now, obviously, we're in the extreme cold piece. So what happens in these particular events? Folks want to know how we come about making these particular decisions and what happens, how do things get triggered in order for folks to kind of be deployed into the right areas. And so what happens whenever there is an extreme event, our Pierce County Human Services Director or that particular designee will determine really what's going on and what our response is going to be kind of as a trigger. And they're following these particular thresholds that I'll mention later on in this slide. And that's really helping to determine when it's time to say go. So this is perhaps one of the biggest things that everyone's been waiting for us to come out with for some time now, and that's what is that actual criteria? So just for the sake of this particular month that we're in and presentation that I'm giving today, we're just going to focus on cold, but we also obviously have some hot weather thresholds as well. So when we're speaking of cold weather, I'm just going to read this straight across here. So forecasted or actual snow accumulation of more than 1 inch, or forecasted or actual temperatures of 32 degrees Fahrenheit or below, snow accumulation or rain at or near freezing temperatures. I want to just make the statement that with our county, what we do is we rely heavily on our jurisdictions to kick in first. So that means that, you know, we've got the city of Tacoma, the city of Puyallup, some different communities that have Department of Emergency Management response teams, and they may have different thresholds. And so those do kick in first, and our county is there to support and back them. Also for rural Pierce County, we do step into those areas that don't necessarily have a jurisdiction that has a Department of Emergency Management. So partnering agencies. We have a lot of different partnering agencies that are contracted to do work with the county. And as mentioned, we also have a lot of different jurisdictions that step up to the plate as well. It takes all of us to make sure that, you know, none of our brothers and sisters that are in this type of situation perish or get extremely ill. So, you know, as you can see here, we have a lot of different folks that are doing a lot of different things. To your left, you can see the local jurisdictions in our county and what that looks like. And then, of course, to the right, you can see the various agencies in our county and really what it is that what they do according to their contracts with us. And really, I'm going to get into what that translates to in this type of situation. So you're going to see a lot of different responsibilities here. And I'm going to go through what the different jurisdictions and interventions mean in an inclement weather or cold weather situation, including with Pierce County, what our responsibilities are. So I'm not going to read these off. Obviously, you can see them. And of course, I'll make sure that Rob gets this particular slideshow at the end of the presentation today, at the end of the meeting. But yeah, so it's our responsibility at the county to do a lot of different things. We're doing a lot of coordination. Of course, we consulted with a lot of folks in putting this plan together in order to set thresholds. You know, we're expanding services. I know that some key members of our team are even available on this call today, such as like Donna Stinson, who does contract work and also you know, some of our invoices, and then Sarah Appling, Jeff Rogers, Anne Marie Edmonds, Jeff Campion, Nate Bonton. Our team is here to help everyone and to help navigate things through these types of situations. So, you know, if you have any questions as to what's an allowable expense, you know, those folks and myself, we're all there to help. We're a phone call or an email away, so just let us know. And that's one of the very, very important responsibilities that we do hold in these types of situations. So the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management, or the PCDEM, what they typically do is they will automatically go over and be activated and go over and be placed at the EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Center. It's right over by where you go and vote, which is another important thing coming up. So they're actually right over there, and they have it's a really, really cool facility. It makes you feel really important when you walk in. You feel like you're like in the White House Situation Room or something like that. So it's a big room, and everyone kind of comes together, and they just stay on top of the weather, and they stay on top of what's going on, and they stay on top of the temporary facilities that have been put up with tents and things of that nature. And so you got a lot of people that are working behind the scenes whenever these types of situations come up. So that's one of the biggest things that the DEM provides is, you know, for the stakeholders to come together and to be able to have that bit of continuity in order to make sure that everyone is safe. Also, other responsibilities, the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department is extremely instrumental in these times. They're keeping track on all that's going on. They're keeping track of, I can remember in our last cold weather event last year, they were able to help with, keeping folks isolated that had COVID. They were able to, keep on top of the numbers of folks that were, sadly severely hurt, which, was a wonderful thing that it was all minimized last year. And then also even this summer when we had a few hot days because of you guys, because of the community coming together to make sure that everyone did their part to make sure that people were safe. But yes, the health department plays an intricate role in that. Very grateful for them. Again, local jurisdictions, a lot of them have their own plans when it comes to their Department of Emergency Management. For those that don't have a DEM, our county is there to back them up. And then, of course, we've got, some of the various intervention types that step up as well. And one of those would be our coordinated entry agencies. So what they're doing is they're making sure that whenever things kind of sunset and the weather goes back to, above threshold, and they're there to have those also important diversion conversations with folks that are sadly leaving, and leaving like a warming center and returning sadly into an encampment. They're there to put those supports together and have those diversion conversations to see that there is some sort of creative solution to hopefully end that homeless situation for that tailored individual and hopefully seek some sort of permanent housing, or at least to have some sort of plan together and make sure that that person is part of our HMIS system. Street outreach teams. Street outreach teams are the vessel to all of this. They're the ones that have the relationships and build the rapport with folks that are on the streets. Ultimately, if someone is going to be trustworthy from the perspective of someone who is living in a tent on the streets, they're trusting and leaning on that professional that is an outreach worker because, again, they have that rapport with them. So the outreach workers are so important because they're the ones that are trying to get people into the overnight shelters. They're the ones that are trying to get people connected to the resources, and they do this stuff on a daily basis. Sorry, guys, my dad is calling me and he shouldn't be. He's retired, bless his heart. So they're the ones that are getting everyone, into the different resources. And it's just in this particular situation, obviously circumstances are different and the weather is cold. And so hopefully, the folks that are in tents and whatnot are willing to take them up on those offers. So outreach team is extremely important. As mentioned, when it comes to their contracts, they're the ones that do have allocated funds to be able to make purchases such as blankets and water and things of that nature. Overnight shelters typically tend to open up a little bit more when they meet their threshold and they open the doors and have, whether it's a cot system or additional space for folks that are out there on the streets. And so obviously there has to be that communication between outreach teams and shelters so that they can seamlessly get folks from the street into some sort of safety. Then there are also day shelter operators. And so we're very, very grateful for those. I know that last year we had the Family Housing Network. We also had Lighthouse, and we've had a few others that, would really just step up and make their facilities available for folks throughout the day so that they could get out of the cold. And so day centers are simply there to make sure, again, that coordination is happening with the outreach teams and shelters. Outreach teams know that they can drop folks off at the different day shelters. And they're there to provide resources. They're there to provide comfort and warmth to people that are in those experiencing homelessness in these situations. And then, of course, we can never forget safe parking. That is very, very important part of what we do. So safe parking, when it comes to cold and hot weather, they'll typically open up. A lot of them are at churches. Shout out to Paula Anderson, who does an amazing job over at Homeward Bound, our safe parking provider. So they're typically at churches. And so in these times, a lot of the churches will open their doors and say, rather than being in your car, come on in. I had the amazing opportunity last winter to go around to some of our safe parking sites and to see the work that these churches are doing and letting folks in and how amazing those folks felt to get something warm to drink and something to eat, and to warm up their toes from all the cold weather. What happened here? Uh-oh. Pardon me. Is that the end of my, oh, that is the end of my slideshow. I did not realize that. So what we're doing is we are putting together, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put together our Monday meeting for us to, let me stop sharing real quick. We're going to put together our Monday meeting for us to, as a community, to be able to come together, our stakeholders, and talk these things through and communicate and really coordinate so that we can make sure that every single person that is out on these streets have what they need in order to survive, whether it's a resource to get into you know, an overnight shelter or one of those day centers that I just mentioned, or it's, you know, if they choose to stay where they're at, that they have the resources that are going to help them to survive this particular cold weather incident. So in those particular meetings, I will gladly step in and facilitate. And, you know, we typically have our outreach team and our shelter, our emergency shelter, some folks from the coalition, our health department steps up and they come to these meetings, really just all of the stakeholders, you know, as mentioned, the coordinated entry providers, everyone comes together to coordinate and make sure that we are all on the same page. And so we're going to do that Monday morning at 9 a.m. for the folks that are able to jump on that particular call. And as we speak, we're kind of in the background putting that together. So I'll take any questions.
So Delmar, let me double check real quick before you take questions. I know Caleb had some time limitations this morning.
I'm
and
sorry,
I wanted to make sure that
my dear buddy Caleb.
No. Yeah,
No,
it's all good. I just wanted to make sure you have time, Caleb, to still cover your material if we take questions now.
I do. I moved my call a little bit farther. So appreciate that, Rob. Thank you for that. Go ahead,
Okay.
Delmar.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
Caleb. Caleb is absolutely instrumental and amazing. And I did not give Caleb much time. I'm a talker, guys. I'm sorry.
It's all good. So there are a number of questions in the chat. But I don't know if folks want to raise hands and ask some questions as well. Yeah, Teresa?
I have a question just about the meetings. Thank you, Delmar. That it's really good to have something in writing, and it's great to have you here talking with us about it. So I speak for probably more than just myself saying how much that's appreciated. I know I've been going to the outreach meetings, and there's some confusion from other people who do outreach work on a voluntary basis, whether or not they're welcome to come to those meetings. I don't know if I slipped on in and they just didn't shut the door quickly enough, or if it really is open to community members who are engaged in this work or other agencies engaged in this work who may not be contracting with the county. So could you clarify that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And so those particular outreach meetings are for the agencies that are really, it's to provide them the space to come together and just to have those strategic talks. And so we do want to kind of limit who all is there, just so that those agencies have that ability to come and have the strategic, almost agency related, field related type conversations to be able to navigate whatever it is that they need to navigate. So hopefully that answers questions. But again, I know that the coalition has folks that are out there doing outreach work as well. So I think that that's a good opportunity for the coalition folks that do the outreach work to come together.
So I'm a little confused because I don't know if I just got myself kicked out of that meeting by my question, or if you're saying those of us who are already coming are okay, but you want to vet anyone else who's interested in coming?
I'll say that it's not a meeting for the community to be able to come in. It's a space for those that are doing the outreach work to be able to have that venue to talk about strategy and whatever it is that they need to have the conversation on in order to move the work forward. And I know that the coalition has a few folks that go out in the community and do outreach work. So it's not a matter of being funded by the county or not. It's just a matter of like minds being able to come together and have
Okay,
this discussion.
that's much more clear. So people who are actually doing outreach would be welcome, but just not as a community venue for people who are
Correct.
not doing outreach. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Courtney.
Thank you. Hi, Delmar. It's always a pleasure to see you, so don't take this personally.
All good.
But frustrated because I still don't know who's providing shelter, when they're going to have cots and supplies. We have freezing temperatures and snow in the 10-day forecast. Like, I feel like this is good stuff to learn in August, but not today. I need to know who's doing the work, where to send people, and that they have supplies on hand now.
You bring up an amazing point. Thank you for that, Courtney, because it's something that I failed to mention, and I obviously should have, because that's why everyone's here today. I encourage everyone to stay on top of the coalition site, because the coalition site is going to give that in-the-moment guidance as to what's going on, how many beds are available, and things of that nature. It's going to really give you a guideline on who has day centers that are open, what those times are, all of that wonderful stuff, all the amazing details should be right here in that particular site. And that's not even just for the cold weather or hot weather, that's for every single day. Obviously, with everyone adjusting, then those things will be adjusted once we, shelter expansion happens and things of that nature. So thank you for that, Courtney, and my apologies for failing to mention that.
And Maureen.
So good to see you, Maureen.
Thank you. It's good to be here. So Delmar, thanks for the presentation and the PowerPoint that we can all look at later as well, the slides. And I've got about 80 questions in the chat, but a couple of things I think are really important if you can clear these up. One, I heard you start by saying that the county human services or homelessness services wasn't going to kick into action maybe until just hours before they were going to do anything. And I've led the responses countywide to extreme weather as a volunteer. And let me tell you, you need a lot more than a few hours. So that's one thing. And it's good, as you know, following up on what Courtney was saying, volunteers need to know. And I'm really glad to see the county funded contracted outreach folks and other agencies involved in this plan. But again, timing is everything in some of this. And our experience has been that teams don't go out every day. They don't go out all day. They don't necessarily cover every single encampment. So are you picking that up, or somebody at the county picking up to make sure somebody's out every day with every encampment? And the last thing for this series is we really need you to clarify these outreach meetings. So the ones that you're having starting on Monday, who gets to go? The ones that are happening right now, the every other week ones, my understanding with Jeff Rogers was that these were open to people who were doing outreach, whether they were volunteers or they were funded by the county.
Yeah, you bring up some amazing points. Thank you for that, Maureen. And so it's not as though we're waiting an hour or two before people are deployed. Our Department of Emergency Management, as well as myself, we're kind of briefed on what the weather is going to be. And we do get that information out ahead of time so that we can prepare. Also, that is a part of contract language to be available and ready to go whenever these inclement weather situations happen. We all know that, homelessness definitely happens outside of the hours from 9 to 5. And it happens on the weekends too. And, inclement weather really doesn't pinpoint and say, Monday at 3 o'clock, it's going to be cold, but because people are, got to go home from work, we're going to stop at 5. So we took all of that into consideration when it came to the language of our contracts. And and that is appropriate language for outreach and shelter. As far as who is in the meetings, I was hopeful to clarify that, when it comes to the outreach meetings, that the folks that are doing the outreach work definitely welcome to come into those particular meetings to strategize and talk about all that's going on. And as far as the meeting that comes up on Monday at 9, again, that's very, very similar to the meetings that we've had in the past, in which we're open to anyone that is really coming in, and it really even almost similar to this, and is doing the work and interested, wants to know what's going on. Feel free, if you're bringing an idea to the table, feel free to come to that, because even if you're a community member and you say, I've got 20 blankets and I don't know what to do with it, then that meeting might be an amazing place for someone to come and drop that knowledge in the chat. And someone can say, okay, well, I'm with such and such, agency, and we do outreach work, and I can come pick those 20 blankets up. It's a community event, Maureen, and it's going to take all of us. So if there are folks that want to come into that meeting, go for it. Hopefully that answers your questions.
Thank you.
Zoe?
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've been harping on this already, but I just need to throw in, it is deeply misguided to not invite the outreach, like volunteer outreach workers. We do a ton of this work. We're also the people that are usually able to get the more non-traditional supplies. Hats and socks and hand warmers are great, but people need tarps, people need all kinds of stuff that the city and the county will not fund, and that we get funding from residents to be able to purchase these supplies. I personally didn't know that this meeting was happening, and finding out Friday morning that it's going to be Monday at 9 a.m. Is not the most helpful. Additionally, you said that we should be checking the coalition's website about shelters. That those numbers change every day. To my knowledge, that is not being updated here, and is not the purpose of this coalition. Like, there needs to be a central line where people can find out where shelter is at that moment. I'm deeply disappointed that the county is getting to this so late. We've, known that winter is coming. And additionally, we're still using the, honestly, horrible definitions that don't include wind chill for what constitutes an emergency. People die outside of those emergencies every year. The groups that work, that are not under contract, that are not agency, do a lot of this outreach work. We're the ones that go after hours on the weekends, have consistent relationships with a lot of these camps. I see Zara on this call, and if they didn't know that this meeting was happening, that's such an oversight. There are a lot of people doing really important work that the city and the county refuse to acknowledge. And yeah, I will leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Zoe. First and foremost, let me reiterate once again that, who's invited to particular meetings. As I mentioned before a few different times, that if you are out there doing outreach work, it's definitely worth your while to go to those particular outreach meetings and have.
But what outreach are you doing to those groups to make sure they're aware that this exists?
Well, these platforms, for instance, such as today, I'm coming in and saying that is a very appropriate way for those particular groups to come in and communicate and have those types of relationships with the funded outreach partners. As far as the meeting that goes on Monday, this is my first time even mentioning it to the public that we are having these meetings. And even before these meetings are put together, there has to be some planning and things of that nature that go into consideration. And, we have to take deeper looks into the forecast and whatnot. So, this is my first time of being able to publicly say that. So I am sorry that it is Friday morning and we're now coming upon Monday, and that's when these particular meetings will come about. But yes, that's kind of where we are with things, and hopefully those folks that are interested in coming to that particular meeting can show up. And thank you for that, Zoe.
I'm extremely frustrated. Is anyone at the county even aware of the names of the groups that do this work? Because I can name half a dozen off the top of my head. My group is one of them. You know, the county consistently will not acknowledge that there are people outside of this coalition, outside of the agencies that are doing this work. You know, they're saying that you know, this is the first time you're telling the public. That's not a good thing for us to hear. We want to hear that you know who is doing this work and you're outreaching to them. Not that this is an afterthought. We do an incredibly critical portion of this work. I'm gonna stop because I'm
I appreciate it, and I hear you, and I hear everything that you're saying. And even for our funded agencies, again, me this morning in this particular moment is the first time that I am saying publicly that our Monday morning meeting will happen at 9 a.m. And that's for everyone, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's a paid agency, a funded agency. You know, this is me saying that that's something that will take place, and I'll be there to facilitate on Monday morning. So I do thank you for that comment and all that you do for the community.
All right, so thank you, Zoe, for your concerns and strong advocacy, and Delmar for taking these questions. I do want to, I see Kenneth and Jay and Zara with hands up. If you could keep your hands up, I do want to get to you, but I also want to be able to hear from Caleb with what the city of Tacoma has planned. So we will get to your questions as soon as we get through that. But Caleb, could you kind of give us an update on what your expectations are that the city is prepared to do with the cold weather coming this week?
Yeah, and I just dropped in the chat our link to our website with our resources and reference page of what we're doing. Really the highlighting part is I just want to highlight with some of the stuff that Delmar was speaking about. Mostly ours is around sheltering. So this winter, we're adding 125 shelter beds for the inclement weather. 50 of those will actually be seasonal. And so that will start with Tacoma Rescue Mission at the Holy Rosary site, 50 beds starting in November 21st. The reason for that date is because, as you probably know, they are also working on the 35th and Pacific site and opening that up on the 14th, which we will also hopefully have about 15 or so beds, inclement weather beds there at that site too as well. So it's kind of just in timing sakes with their capacity to be able to do both of those things. And then we've also contracted and supported Catholic Community Services at the Nativity House to add 40 beds, inclement weather response. And our thresholds are very similar to the county, but as Delmar mentioned, you know, sometimes they rely on us in some cases to be a little bit ahead as they are catching, as they are going to support us on the back end too as well. The only difference with 32 and colder is that we do take into account wind chill and rain at 35 degrees. And so when those thresholds hit, the providers will use that as a point to open up their additional inclement weather beds outside of that seasonal bed at Holy Rosary at 50. So that is really the big point of emphasis. I do see Public Library is on, and I saw they put some resources in the chat. We continue to partner with them, especially as folks use those as a warming center in a lot of cases, and we'll be providing supplies on hand for them to be able to give to them, including water, you know, gloves, some hand warmers, foot warmers, stuff like that too as well. So being mindful of some of those natural points of people that take those resources. And then the HEAL team will continue to provide outreach and provide some supplies for individuals that aren't able to find shelter or not ready to get into shelter at that point, with blankets and supplies and stuff like that too as well. So that's just kind of the big highlights I wanted to make sure I mentioned. But if there is other questions that you have, please let me know.
Thank you, Caleb. So let's open up for additional questions. And Kenneth, you're the next person with your hand up.
Delmar, I wanted to make sure that you were heard when you said that this was your first time jumping into this discussion, and you're going to get a bunch of grief, and kind of apologize for that.
You're good, Kenneth. I appreciate you.
But on that note, we do have people who are killing themselves because they're miserable in this weather. We need to be able to tell them ahead of time, this is how long you have to wait for these emergency services, not after time. People have already dealt with under 31-degree weather this weekend or this week. We need to be able to tell them, it's next week, or it's 2 weeks from now, or this is exactly when this is going to be triggered, not just the weather, because they don't have thermometers on them. They don't know what the weather is half the time. That being said, also, what is happening outside of Tacoma? We know about the work that Paula is doing, but what community outreach is happening out there with connecting with the outreach groups?
Yeah, so thank you for that comment, and that's very true. Whether it's 37 or 31, people that are living in it don't know the difference. And as far as work that's being done outside of the city, again, like you just mentioned, Paula has contracted to do safe parking, and that's an amazing thing. As far as outreach goes, we do have CMAR, I want to say, that goes outside of the city limits of Tacoma, and they do a lot of work. I want to say Comprehensive Life does work outside of the city limits of Tacoma. So we do have some different outreach agencies that are on the outskirts of the city of Tacoma that are there to help those particular folks that are not Tacoma centric.
That's exactly.
Are any of those groups actually working outside of Tacoma?
Yes. They're
CLR
contracted. Yes.
is doing work outside of Tacoma. I know
They're doing work
CMAR
outside
does
of Tacoma.
homeless. I know CMAR has locations outside of Tacoma, but only their Tacoma locations are doing homeless services.
Yeah, so again, we do have contracted agencies that are contracted to do that bit of outreach work, and it's outside of the city. Thank you for that, Kenneth.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Kenneth. And Jay, you're our next up.
Hi, Delmar. Thank you for absolutely everything you do. I think what we're facing here, Delmar, is the crisis of non-transparency and the backdoor conversation. And it is imperative that after this meeting, you go back to the totality of Pierce County and go, hey, if we don't start talking to people more often and more clearly and more precisely and go to them more, not open up avenues for them to come to us, we're going to have problems with our outreach and our community services groups. That would be super helpful. Second, inclement weather is a really bad wording that makes us all go, well, when it happens. But in reality, inclement weather is a continuous system of weather responses that we now know about and are congruent with. We should be planning for summer now and winter at the end of winter. We should have everything set up by now, established, lines laid, communication given, organizations acknowledged, and plans set in motion at inclement weather. That lack of transparency is really the cause of not having this. You have plenty of people who are willing to work with you, but without that back and forth, we can't do it. Also, on that same note, I'm aware that they are working on a dashboard. Are they still working on a dashboard in Pierce County? Because if you had just mentioned that, that would quail quite a few of the frustrations, because that is the key of eliminating a large portions of our frustration.
I thank you, Jay, first and foremost. It's always a pleasure to see you. My door is always open to anyone that wants to contact me, whether telephone, email, sit and have a conversation with me. My door is absolutely 100% always open. I can't say that I'm aware of a dashboard. Maybe there has been talk of one that I'm not aware of. I can't speak to that just because I don't know. So I'm sorry about that, Jay.
It was a proposal that came up to Pierce County to the council about 4 or 5 months ago. I cannot remember his name. Burpee was the one who proposed it, and they had thought about it for inclement weather 3 months ago, forgive me. And so that is something that transpired in council, but I don't know if it made it any further, but they were talking about it with the same funding proposition of 12,000 for water and supplies for inclement weather. So if you could backtrack to that and talk to somebody about that, they were talking about dashboard and they were looking for somebody to do the programming for it.
Interesting. Okay, thank you, Jay.
All right, so let's have Zara address her question or information she wants to share. And then unfortunately, we're going to need to move on with our agenda and look forward to working this issue over the weekend and on Monday after meeting. So Zara, go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. Just in case anybody does not know by this point, I have been homeless many times before. My father was chronically homeless for over 10 years, so I am speaking as a lived experience voice. We brought up the emergency weather plan at the Pierce County LEC chapter this Monday. Went to the Safe Sites meeting, had like 4 meetings on Monday, realized that not a lot was being done. So here are the practical solutions that I am spearheading currently as a member of our community so that we can make sure to address the needs of folks who are on the streets. Number 1, we're starting a coalition of churches. I've already been in contact with a church who's excited to lead that coalition. They actually have a homeless ministries program. I'm meeting with them later today as well. We're essentially offering 3 tiers of participation to those churches. They can offer their kitchen, volunteers, food costs, and the costs of like to-go containers to help us create hot meals that can then be distributed to people who are now going to be isolated and all over the city because they've been swept. But by being able to have that church space there and prepare those meals, we can do it. I can do it. Second, we are starting a outreach drive that can function through multiple different sources to
Your
Zara,
mic
you cut out.
Zara. Zara.
Uh-oh.
Your mic cut out. So I'm not sure what happened there.
Am I back?
Now you're working. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, my internet's terrible. Where did it stop?
After
I'm
the
not
kitchen.
100% Yeah.
Okay, second tier is a outreach drive or a outreach supplies drive that can be run through churches, that can be advertised and contributed to by groups like the DSA, Tacoma Home for All, Tacoma Mutual Aid Collective. That's for essential cold weather outreach supplies that are not currently being offered. The expensive stuff, canopies to keep rain off of people, quilted tarps, sleeping bags, rain gear, long underwear, things that are not currently in the distribution network of outreach supplies that can be the difference between somebody contracting hypothermia and not.
You cut out again.
You cut out again.
So Zara, what might be helpful is if you could drop some stuff into the chat. That probably will get around the internet issues that you're experiencing.
Can anyone hear me yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Outreach supply. Third is basically the church I've been talking to is already willing to step on board and is in the stages of getting themselves established as a safe site. I'm going to help them with that process. We are going to use them as an example for other churches to be able to build that network of safe sites so that then we have centralized distribution, which is also going to be critical. Then we can have things, she was even excited about like building a fire pit that the whole church can use that can also keep people warm at safe sites. If you are interested in being part of this coalition, if you have outreach supplies you would like to donate, if you would like to know more that you can do, please contact me. I will put my contact information in the chat. I am not being paid for this. I do not work for an organization. I am doing this because I don't want people to get hypothermia and die. I want to be able to continue giving people food as I have been doing, but with the sweeps that are happening right now, we really, really need to come together to get these essential supplies and figure out a distribution network because it's disrupted by the sweeps. Again, this is all coming from lived experience. This directly involves the Lived Experience Coalition, RAP, Rahima, I just responded to your email. We're also looking at you guys. We're looking at all the mutual aid groups because the fact of the matter is we all know there is not enough shelter. There's not going to be enough shelter, which means that we as a community need to take responsibility for helping people get the infrastructure that they need to survive winter. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Zara. And what I would suggest is if you could come to the Monday Safe Sites for All meeting at noon. The Safe Sites for All folks have been doing coordination with churches around storing and distribution of emergency supplies. So I think there should be a conjoined, it'd probably be most helpful to have a coordinated effort. So it'd be great to have you attend that if you have the capacity.
In fairness, I did attend the Safe Sites meeting on Monday and did not see, I am open again to tapping into all efforts that are currently existing. That is why I am talking about this. However, after being in that meeting on Monday, I was very, very concerned about the ability of the groups who are currently doing this to access those critical infrastructure supplies, tarps, canopy, expensive things, right, that we may not have the budget for. So this is
yes, it's going to definitely take a group effort
with other efforts, and that's why I am saying this and trying to be transparent. I will be at the Safe Sites meeting. I'm not trying to say this is the only game in town. I want us all to organize on this so we can be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, thank you for that. And let's close this out with Jay. I see you have your hand up.
Zara, I must say that we all absolutely appreciate you and your work and your efforts, but I'd like you to remember that we are a group of people that have been working on things for a rather long time. And it's not just our input, and I'm sorry that you are direly disappointed in us, but we have saved lives. We have done incredible work, and these people have done so much with absolutely nothing given them or granted them. So please try to work with them a little bit more. It would be greatly appreciated if you gave them more than one hour.
And that's why.
Thank you, Jay. And we can all work together. So
that we can all work together. I really am not trying to make anyone feel that I am ungrateful for what is being done. I'm just operating from a state of seeing the lack that is currently happening and trying to figure out how we can all organize together to do this, which is why I'm here and will be attending the Safe Sites meetings. I apologize if it comes off as if my passion is mistaken as ungratefulness or unwillingness to work with anyone. That is not what I am intending. That is why I'm here, trying to be as transparent as possible and unite these efforts.
Appreciate that, and we'll look forward to working together. So let's move to I think we've covered a lot of our government updates, but Delmar and Caleb, anything additional that you want to share on this topic or other county and city updates before we move along?
You know, just so you know that this particular plan that I've presented on today is still in the process of being vetted through appropriate channels. So it isn't quite official yet, but it's official enough for me to bring it to the group today to present on. So just wanted to make that known. And then once it is official, it will actually go up on our website. And again, I know there were probably some questions for me in the chat. You can please email me those questions that you have, and I'd be happy to get back with you.
Great, thank you, Delmar. And I do know that a number of folks asked about planning with the jail around jail releases during cold weather. And some conversations had taken place last year around that. So just kind of revisiting that topic did come up from multiple folks in the chat. How about you, Caleb?
You know, I'm sure Delmar would agree with this and won't speak for him, so I'll just make sure I say it on my end. With the folks that are boots on the ground, whether volunteer, whether paid by a nonprofit, whether working for the city or the county, contracted or not, we do recognize, similar to our hot weather response, that those folks are really important to this system. And if we've come short in terms of communicating on that, we can continue to be better with that and working with all of our partners, including ones that are not contracted or not, just to make sure that we all understand what the best possible system can be in order to keep people alive, to keep people safe, and doing the best that we can in a crisis response system. And that's just what this is a crisis response. This is not a solution. The solution is more housing. It's more affordable housing. It's getting people outside of the streets into more sustainability. And that's what we're trying to keep our eyes on while we're doing crisis response. And we know what that crisis response does take the hands and feet of everybody here and the people that are not here that are doing this response. So again, thank you all for that. And we continue to hope keeping to work and trying to be as flexible and nimble to make changes so that we can continue to keep people as safe as possible. Thanks all.
Thanks, Caleb. Okay, so we do need to shift to other topics briefly. Next up, do we have anybody here from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department that wanted to offer an update this week?
I'm here if no one else is.
I'm here.
Okay.
Thanks, Zoe.
There you are, Jenny.
I'm gonna yield. I know we're short on time. It's been a great conversation. I'm gonna just introduce Adam, who most of you know, is with our environmental health division, and things are kind of quiet on the communicable disease front. Go get boosted, get a flu shot, et cetera, et cetera. You've heard all that from me before, and I'm gonna hand things to Adam to talk about the weather response, and I will share some things in the chat per usual. I hope everyone stays safe. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Adam, glad you can join us.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so first I'm going to drop a couple links in the chat. Couple website Hi, Valerie. Couple website resources. Two from our health department about frostbite, hypothermia, how to recognize them, how to treat them, what to do. Or one about that, and then another one about carbon monoxide poisoning and kind of recognizing the signs for that. The third one is from the CDC, and it's not geared necessarily towards folks experiencing homelessness, but I want to draw your attention to page 10. I'm also recognizing my links aren't going through very well, so I will try that again. Page 10 of the CDC. I'll drop the links in once I'm done talking because they're not working right now. Is about staying warm if you're stranded in a vehicle. And again, it's not necessarily geared to folks who are living in their vehicles, but it does have some really good pointers about how to stay warm and safe if you are in a vehicle during cold weather. In addition, the health department will be sending out updates on social media as updates become available. Second thing I want folks to know about is that we do have some limited funds available to support some of the purchasing needs that folks have been identifying. I've already reached out to Christine Lindquist, and I will be following up. My team will be following up with her after this to kind of see what the different needs are that have been compiled. I've already been keeping track myself of some of the things I've been hearing and seeing in the chat. But it sounds like if folks can get that information to Christine, that might be the best avenue for us to understand how best we can spend those dollars and get those needs or get the funding out for these needs as soon as possible. The third thing I want to draw attention to that I haven't heard much discussion about yet is the risk of flooding this weekend. There is a potential risk of flooding near basically all the rivers in Pierce County. So I just want to draw your attention to that. If you are doing any outreach for folks, individuals, or encampments that are near these waterways, I would encourage them to encourage you to encourage them to try to get up to a little higher ground, at least through the weekend if possible. Especially this first big rainstorm of the season. It sounds like even the forecast there can be a little unpredictable, just because they don't know how the rivers are going to react. So as far as what to do to stay warm and stay dry, so much of the advice out there just is rarely practical, and it's really hard. And so I'm sorry I don't necessarily have a great fix, but I'd say with the heavy rains followed up by the cold weather, staying dry, which I'm sure you're all already aware of, but that's going to be crucial. Anything you can do. Grocery bags, plastic grocery bags, you can use to line shoes. So between your socks and your shoes, that can be an effective way if you do need to be transporting between places. That can be a good way to keep your feet dry, because once things do get wet, especially when it's cold, it's a lot harder to dry them out. So those preventative steps you can take ahead of time are always best. If you see folks in your outreach that are using heat lamps, lanterns, other heating elements, just please remind them to stay vigilant. I mentioned that carbon monoxide poisoning earlier, so that's around ventilation around heating elements. So if folks are using these types of things to stay warm, just try to encourage them to keep their spaces well ventilated, again, to avoid that carbon monoxide risk. And as folks have already pointed out in this meeting as well, with the blustery winds that are going to be coming, these heating sources, they can be knocked over or things can be blown down on top of them. So just really keeping vigilant if they are going to be using these types of sources. So I realize, they're in challenging situations, so it's not always practical, but if you're just reminding folks to stay vigilant, try to prevent getting wet in the first place, which I know is a challenge, but those are kind of the main things. I'm going to be dropping these links in the chat separate from what's happening immediately. The health department, we did finally just get somebody hired. They won't onboard until the end of the month, but they are going to be focusing on environmental, kind of these types of weather condition things specific to folks experiencing homelessness. And so that person will be introduced to this group as quickly as possible, and they will be working with folks with lived experience to really see how we can, get ahead of the game. So I realize it's not helpful today, but soon. So.
Thank you, Adam, and glad you were able to make it today. And thanks, Leah, for fixing those links and dropping them in the chat. That's very helpful. So let's see, I don't believe we have anybody from the Department of Emergency Management on the call with us. Let's pause for just a moment in case. Okay, so, well, we've of course had a very vigorous conversation about the weather response this morning. It's taken up a lot of our time. So I'm looking at our agenda to see what we can salvage. Again, very briefly, I think we should talk a little bit about a review of the Pierce County Human Services Committee meeting that took place earlier this week. At that meeting, the content was focused on two things. The Pierce County Affordable Housing Action Plan, which was moved forward by the committee for the full consideration of the council. And I know Rosemary wanted to provide a quick update on some of the pertinent content there. And then we'll talk briefly about the presentation that Garrett helped queue up regarding things that the county can do to options for dealing with the funding gaps that exist in our homelessness emergency or crisis response system as it exists now. So why don't we start with Rosemary? I know you wanted to talk about the 0.1% of 1% sales tax for affordable housing at the county level.
Thank you, Rob. This will be very short, but in attending the meeting, I was happy to see that the council wanted to amend the resolution to say in the whereas sections, which sometimes we think of as sort of flowery introductions, but they really are compelling moral arguments many times. And the county agreed that Pierce County must be an active contributor by filling funding gaps and providing financial support to the construction of affordable housing units in our county. That's saying the county must be responsible, not just as passing through money from other sources, but actually as a source of money. And so with that, whereas, what I was pleased to see was that the council asked their legal staff to move forward with an ordinance that they could consider about adopting a 0.1% sales tax for housing. And this is something that a group I'm part of, if any of you would like to join us, can do. It's called Revenue for Housing. For the past 2 years, we've been attending council meetings consistently saying that the council should exercise their right to implement this tax as a continuing source of funds for a variety of housing needs. And there's a need, as you know, on the council to have 5 votes to support this kind of a funding idea. And with 4 votes, they wouldn't be able to do it. So there's work to be done to try to convince the whole council that this is an important step for us to take. And I'll put my information and the Revenue for Housing information in the chat if anyone's interested in joining us. So that's mostly what I wanted to say, Rob.
Thank you, Rosemary. And in the interest of time, I'll be super brief about the second topic that was considered during the meeting, and that is related to the funding gap to better build out the homelessness crisis response system that we currently have in the county. And this is a gap that was has been identified as part of the planning effort for the Pierce County Comprehensive Plan to End Homelessness. Garrett's here, so I'm sure he's going to correct me as soon as I say something wrong about the couple of slides that I'm going to go over. But I'm not going to put the slides on screen, but really what Garrett was covering was that the county has roughly spends between $50 and $60 million per year on homelessness, and to size the system to the need, we really need to, as a county and all the communities within, be spending about $100 million per year more than we are right now. So there were not really recommendations, and again, Garrett, jump in a moment with further clarification. But the point of this was really not to make specific recommendations, but to point out what might be available opportunities. And so among the things that Garrett covered were other funding streams that might be able to add and help fill that $100 million gap, including things like reallocation of mental health and substance use tax, the 1/10 of 1% that the county has passed after a 10-year leg to get there. And also that there are opioid settlement funds that are going to be flowing into Pierce County that could help provide some dollars. Additional philanthropy, input from the business community and faith community. There's also the potential for new local funding if local governments would allocate general fund dollars, including the county allocating general fund dollars to help fill that gap. And then there was talk about other taxes that could be imposed to help fill that gap. Garrett, what am I missing in my super quick overview?
Looks good to me. I mean, the county council asked for a plan and I provided a menu of options. So there's a little mismatch there, right? But really it's local taxes, it's, clear outs of state and federal money, and then lots of the other kind of tailing things. But those 3, local taxes, state funding, and federal funding are kind of the 3 workhorses we need to look at for growth.
Yeah, and as Courtney's alluding to in the chat, one of the challenges is that quite a few of the taxes that are available to local governments are based on sales tax, which is the most regressive kind of taxing that you can do. And so we live in a state with the most regressive tax structure in the country. And we don't have a effective wealth tax or income tax in our state, and that's not likely to change anytime soon. But what is available to the local government quite frequently is based around sales tax, which is regressive. However, the other taxes that Garrett did mention in his presentation included property tax levy, which does deal with that, which is much more progressive. It's taxing property owners for other property owners. And then, yeah, the other option that was mentioned was the affordable housing sales tax. So 2 sales taxes and a property tax were among the taxes that were suggested as potential options.
Yeah, and I'll put that plan in the chat. And I would just say, you know, we attempted to identify some of the regressive nature of the options. That was some brilliant idea of Courtney to really, like, who does this help? Who does this hurt? How does this affect racial equity? It's a nice way to frame some of this discussion. So, you know, hats off for pushing for that inclusion.
Thank you. And I will put the link to the recording, which I wasn't able to actually attend the meeting earlier this week, but I did watch the recording afterward, and you too can experience the fun and excitement of watching a 2-hour, I guess it was an hour and 50 minutes or something, county council committee meeting. So that's the weekend. You can spend your time on that. The last thing I will mention before we move on to other items in the agenda is that the advisory board for the comprehensive plan to end homelessness does meet this afternoon. And maybe Garrett can plop the link to that into the chat. That meeting is the main thing that is going to feature is an interim report from the consultants' social change partners regarding the work that they've been doing around the unified regional approach, having a much more regional system in place so that we're responding to and working to end homelessness without referring to every municipality's emergency plans. Well, wait, that's earlier in the meeting. But I just, if you have the time to attend that meeting, it happens between 1 and 3 this afternoon, and hope to see a number of you folks join. It's open to the public, and I believe there is the opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting as well. So.
Yeah, and I know we're late, but so I sat through a presentation last night of it and one earlier in the day yesterday, and it's really good. Like it's a really good discussion of choices we can make and potential impacts of them and pathways forward. Very in the details, but if you're interested in that level of kind of overview of how this could go down, and it's initial still, but I think it's worth the time. It'll be a drawn out meeting because I think there'll be lots of discussion around that. So whoever's stuck facilitating that is not going to be able to manage well, I don't think.
That sounds familiar somehow after this morning. Yeah, the meeting is at 1. It's scheduled to go from 1 to 3. And then Garrett, will that be posted as a link after the meeting so that folks can catch it if they miss the live meeting?
You know, we produce notes, but we don't typically publish a recording, but I can make a recording if someone asks for it. Hint, hint.
Okay. Yeah, I'm asking.
Oh, then we'll make a recording and post it. Thanks, Rob.
I just created more work for Garrett, the power. And then I presume the presentation itself can be made available as well.
Yes, it will be made available.
Yes, Jenny, your question about the regular cadence of these meetings. So the advisory board for the comp plan meets the first Friday of each month, as Sally said quicker than I could get it out of my mouth. All right, so I'm looking at the rest of our agenda. I think we've already mentioned the Safe Sites for All meeting. That meeting will take place on Monday at noon. I do urge folks to go to the pchomeless.org site, and you can find the links to all of the coalition meetings. If you don't have enough meetings in your life, there's plenty of them listed there. But I do expect that Monday's meeting will be very focused on the cold weather response. So hopefully folks can join. So we haven't had a breakout discussion for a couple of weeks, and I think I'd kind of like to end today's meeting with a breakout conversation and flash back to last week. So briefly, Timothy, can you do a overview of the 2 weeks ago meeting notes from the breakout on, I guess it would be October 21st? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Ever
I'll put that
so
on screen real quick.
great. And when I'm done, I will throw this in the chat as well, so it's easy for people to download it. So ever so briefly, because we've kind of talked about these issues a lot this morning. This is from 2 weeks ago. I, as always, divided it into several categories, and I'll lead with the first category, which is the proposed coalition roles to this question: how should the coalition help coordinate the response to cold weather this winter? Rather than go through all of this feedback, I'll just note that this has been taken up by the coalition, and obviously a lot of these suggestions have been acted upon, and this coordination is happening. There are a number of comments that were feedback for Pierce County in terms of their cold weather preparations. Again, the conversation that has been happening this morning is much more up to date in real time, but there's more information here in case folks are interested. A list of other ideas that came up a few weeks ago that people can look at. And, you know, again, a number of issues that have come up from the lived experience perspective that folks would like to have taken into consideration as we talk about this stuff. And, you know, I will just throw this in the chat so that people have it for later to look at if you want to. And let's move on.
Great, thank you. So yeah, that definitely is pertinent to the main conversation we've had today.
Absolutely.
So what we wanted to discuss, what we wanted to have time to discuss today, we didn't have the time last week, is if you have any additional questions or comments that should be shared regarding the Pierce County Village project. So that was what we spent the majority of last week's meeting on. And so let me open up breakout rooms. I will do, again, this is the same routine. If folks can stay, we will go right up to 11 and then I'll close the rooms. And if someone can take notes and come back and drop those in the chat afterward, that would be fantastic. Again, our question is, are there any additional questions or comments that you would like to share regarding the Pierce County Village project? So here we go. We'll be back here at 11. Well, welcome back, everyone. I know we are right at 11 o'clock now, so I want to honor everyone's time. If the note taker from your room could drop the notes into the chat, that would be very helpful. And I do want to wish everybody a safe and hopefully dry and with power all weekend, despite the windstorm. I hope everybody has a good week and weekend. And if you have the capacity to stay on the call, we will spend a few minutes planning next week's meeting. If you don't, then I look forward to seeing everybody next Friday.